President, my friend and colleague from Kentucky, Senator Paul, and I would like at this point to address the Senate about a bill we will be introducing. Coal is an enormously vital sector of Kentucky's economy. More than 200,000 jobs in my state depend on it, including the jobs of approximately 18,000 coal miners. Coal is tremendously important to our country as well. 1/2 of the country's electricity comes from coal. And yet, as we're faced with a weakened economy and high unemployment, an overreaching Environmental Protection Agency in Washington is blocking new jobs for Kentuckians and Americans by waging a literal war on coal. To mine for coal, coal operators must receive what are called 404 permits. Those come from the EPA in order to operate. One such mine in southern West Virginia followed all of the proper procedures, got the green light from EPA to proceed with operations back in 2007. But now, 3.5 years later, in an unprecedented reversal, the EPA has retroactively reinterpreted its authority, withdrawn the permit it issued, and shut down the mine. The EPA's reinterpretation cost 280 Americans their jobs. The EPA also announced that 79 of the 404 permit applications still being considered would be subject to enhanced environmental review. Enhanced environmental review. Effectively putting them in limbo, along with jobs and economic activity they could create. Some of those permits are for jobs in Kentucky. The EPA's action simply defies logic. Not only are they changing the rules in the middle of the game, they are retroactively changing the rules to shut down mines they already approved. No mine, regardless of whether it has been operating for years in full compliance of every rule and regulation, can be assured that Uncle Sam won't come along and shut them down. And thousands of Kentuckians who work in coal mining or have jobs dependent on mining are literally in jeopardy. Other industries are at risk also. Farmers, developers, the transportation industry, and others also need permits from EPA to continue to operate. They, too, could see these permits revoked. The EPA has turned the permitting process into a backdoor means of shutting down coal mines by sitting on permits indefinitely, thus removing any regulatory certainty. What they're doing is outside the scope of their authority and the law and represents a fundamental departure from the permitting process as originally envisioned by Congress. That's why I rise today to introduce, along with my good friend Senator Rand Paul and Senator James Inhofe, the Mining Jobs Protection Act here in the Senate. This bill will tell EPA to use it or lose it when deciding whether to invoke its veto authority of a 404 permit within a reasonable time frame, giving permit applications the certainty they need to do business. The bill would ensure that all 404 permits move forward to be either approved or rejected, so applicants aren't left in limbo, unsure how to act. The bill also ensures that EPA cannot use its veto retroactively. While being fair to permit applicants, the bill still preserves the EPA's full authority to protect human health and the environment. Here's how the legislation would work. Once the EPA receives a 404 permit, it will have 30 days to determine if it's considering using its veto authority. If the agency is considering doing so, it must publish that fact in the Federal Register, cite any potential concerns, and detail what must be done to address those concerns within the initial 30 days. The EPA then has an additional 30 days for a total of 2 months to invoke its veto authority. If the agency does not use its veto authority within 60 days, the permit automatically moves forward and EPA's veto authority expires. All permits that have already been applied for would go through this process, ensuring every permit gets a fair shake. Any permits vetoed prior to the passage of the bill would be reconsidered by the Army Corps of Engineers. And it was important to me that this legislation address every 404 permit, not just one or a few. This is a fair process that allows the EPA to act as vigorously as necessary to protect the environment and those of us living in it, while also giving permit applications the certainty of knowing within a reasonable time frame whether or not to proceed with mining operations, and knowing that once they have the green light, it's not going to be subsequently revoked. More important, this legislation will allow my state and others to protect the coal and related industry jobs that we already have and grow new ones in the future. So I want to thank my colleague from Kentucky and Senator Inhofe for standing alongside me on this matter that is so important to our states, but also for the country as a whole. This is not just a Kentucky issue. We think our bill strikes a fair balance toward conserving the best of America's natural beauty while also building toward a brighter future. Mr. President, the EPA's mission is important, but so is job creation. And particularly when unemployment is higher than all of us would like, both sides of that equation must be considered. So I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to make the Mining Jobs and Protection Act a law. And Mr. President, I yield the floor.